Hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm your host, Connor. With me, as always, is Phil.
Hello.
And UFC 306 is on the docket today. Is it a good pay-per-view? No. Is it worth the price of admission? No. Does it have some good fights on it? At least one, yes. So that's what we're here to talk about today. But Phil, we have a huge surprise in store for the listeners. Many will know that in the YouTube comments for 100 episodes straight, there was a user by the name of John McCain. I can now reveal real name Simon. Oh, that just makes me think of Zane Simon.
Ugh.
That's unfortunate. Anyway, we'll try to forget that. 100 episodes commented on in a row. I misguidedly told him he could come on the show, that he reached the 100 mark about 8 months ago, but we finally got him on. Simon, welcome to the show. Hi, Connor. It's great to be here. Wow, Simon, you sound a lot like Marge Simpson. I did not expect that. No, we had a scheduling mishap with old John McCain, a.k.a. Simon. So we're going to try to get him on next week, if we can. I know I made a big deal about hyping up his finally, the fact that he finally would be appearing, but we're going to have to try him next week, I think. Because I guess he has a job?
Yeah.
I know. So it's just me and Phil and at least one good fight to keep you company here on this week's episode of Heavy Hands. That one good fight, I think, is, I'm excited about it, is the main event of UFC 306. Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili. Feels we have waited an eternity to see Merab fight for the title. Was for a very long time and is a very similar position to old Corey Sandhagen, who is sadly pretty much out of the title picture for the foreseeable future. But it's finally happening. Of course, propping up this main event in co-main position is the third fight between Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko. Once again, taking place in an even more Mexican-themed venue, which makes it almost certain that Alexa Grasso is going to win again. Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopes is supposed to happen on this card. It's supposed to. It was supposed to happen previously, I think, more than once. So we might be looking at a what was the Tony Ferguson fight that kept getting snake bit? Ferguson Khabib, I guess. We could be looking at a situation like that where Ortega keeps getting injured. I don't know. We're going to talk about it anyway, in brief at least, because we have discussed it before. And there's a couple other ones on here too. Sean O'Malley, Merab Dvalishvili is the main event and the focus of this, our first segment. And this is a difficult fight to break down, Phil.
Yeah.
It's difficult. Yeah, go on, please.
It's one of the ones which is, talked about them a lot. It's one of the ones which is simultaneously very difficult to break down and one which is likely to look absolutely one-sided as it actually happens. Or more to the point, like the outcome that we see was the outcome that would always happen. Because there are broadly two ways in which this fight goes, which are that Sean O'Malley stops Merab on the feet, or that Merab absolutely drowns him. And in both cases, it's going to look like, it's probably going to look like that. There are universes in which this is a thrilling competitive fight where O'Malley gets taken down and gets back up and, wins rounds by hurting Dvalishvili despite getting controlled and, vice versa, all of this kind of, it could be nip-tuck stuff, but the broad dynamics mean that it's going to look, I think the result is going to look inevitable when it happens.
Yeah.
It's going to look like, as though Dvalishvili never had any chance of taking O'Malley down, especially if he gets, slept sometime in like the first 8 minutes. And, if Dvalishvili wins, he's probably just going to be absolutely thrashing O'Malley by the end of the fight.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely foresee getting a bit of both of those fights. I think that's a distinct possibility. Merab has been hurt by plenty of big hitters, hasn't been KO'd. So it's not inconceivable that he does get hurt early or at some point, and either then starts or goes back to crushing poor Sean O'Malley with the pressure and the wrestling and the volume. And it's, as you said, it's also possible that O'Malley gets a read on the takedowns. Dvalishvili goes for a lot more takedowns than he gets as a rule. It's possible he gets a read on that and ends up hurting Merab, after getting drowned a little bit early. But it does feel like whoever wins this fight is going to win it in a very dominant fashion.
Mm-hmm.
In a decisive fashion. And adding to the difficulty is the fact that, particularly on Sean O'Malley's record, there just isn't anyone that looks anything like Merab Dvalishvili. It's very hard to know what to expect. Sean O'Malley is a guy who has outperformed my expectations enough times that I now routinely use him as an example of good striking.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy that I absolutely doubted pretty much every step of the way. And he has shocked me with just incredible performances. Even if, that Pyotr Yan one, I remember being flabbergasted at the time. I thought he was going to get crushed by Pyotr Yan. And I was dead wrong. It's unclear if he won, as Pyotr Yan himself has been out there saying this week, apparently. But it was a great performance, and that's just one of many where he has just stepped up and really shined bright when it really matters. So maybe he can just handle pace and pressure in wrestling. He's certainly got some advantages that the other strikers who've hurt Merab don't have. And I think he's got a consistency of approach that none of them have. But I don't know what it looks like when somebody like Merab fights him. Obviously there's no one really like Merab.
Yeah, this is the other thing, right?
Yeah.
There's no one like Merab in literally any division or any time in MMA history.
Yeah. When he's on his roll, he is the most relentless pace fighter I've ever seen. Not just the most relentless, the most fast-paced pace fighter I've ever seen. We're talking about a guy who he is the Max Holloway of wrestle boxing.
Yep.
Right? Max Holloway was at the forefront of a wave of swarming volume strikers, yet he still holds the records for most strikes thrown, most strikes landed in however many rounds. Multiple of them. Because that's just how much that kind of fighter he was. And Merab is that, but not just the striking. Yep. He's what Colby Covington wishes he was.
Yeah. As I said, he's just someone who just stands aside from comparison. He's hits metrics in terms of takedowns attempted, let alone, completed or anything like that. That I just don't think anyone I've ever seen could even come that close to replicating his pace. Holloway is at least partially a product of, he obviously has incredible cardio, but he's at least partially a product of, not putting too much on his shots and having a game which builds towards volume and so on. Whereas Merab just simply dumps out of a seemingly endless well of cardio.
Yeah.
He's not like Cain Velasquez when he wrestled at heavyweight, who just started, going for the, who leveraged his cardio by going for the most energy efficient takedowns he could, who spent lots of time just, grinding people's head into the canvas with into the cage with his forehead. He's someone who will just hit slam takedowns over and over again and will be absolutely fine after 5 rounds. It's completely inexplicable.
Right. Yeah.
But all that being said,
10 is
one of the men.
10 is a low number of takedowns attempted, just to put a number on it. In a 3-round Merab fight. That is at the high end of virtually every other fighter's wrestling game.
Yep.
And we're talking, he has hit upwards of 40 attempts. He's not hitting all these takedowns, but even that is outrageous. So yeah, please go on.
But yeah, obviously we're talking about a sport where elements can be at least somewhat isolated from one another. It won't matter if he if he has the cardio to hit 40 takedowns, if he can never work his way into range without being punished. And that, I think, is probably the key question of this fight. If Merab can get his hands on Sean O'Malley, remotely reliably, he's probably just going to gas him out, because I just don't think there's anyone that he can't gas out at his weight class if he's doing that.
Yeah. I mean, O'Malley has also impressed me with his cardio. But that has largely, well, I guess there's that Jan fight. I mean, that's pretty crazy. There was the second Cheeto fight in which he throws an absurd number of shots. A lot of them power shots. He's working really hard all fight long. But this is also a fight where he is in control the whole time. Or at least the vast majority of the time. And, yeah, things change when you are the one being put under pressure and you're being made to tense up and react. That is far, far more exhausting than doing, 5 times the baseline work, but when you have all the initiative and you're comfortable. Yeah.
And it's also, I think that initiative is a big part of it as well. I'm sure it is possible to survive, it's possible to survive grappling with Merab, as long as you also hit your own takedowns on him, and you are not allowing him to dictate every grappling exchange. Sure. And you can, do the equivalent of what Cain Velasquez used to do and divert his cardio sort of, down routes where he has to explode and get up. But to simply say, I'm going to neutralize this man, and get up whenever he takes me down, and at the end of the fight, I will be fresher than him, is, I think, at the moment, again, he's someone for whom, if the wheels fall off with Merab, they'll probably, go spinning off into the sunset.
Yeah. The wheels will
come off so fast.
The wheels will kill several of the nearest spectators as they go flying off at such speed.
But, assuming that he's physically intact and all that other kind of stuff, that's just not a proposition which anyone can do. And that's including one of the most physically potent, albeit, not in his prime, but physically potent wrestle boxers we've ever seen in Henry Cejudo. One of the most purely violent and technically skilled that we've ever seen in Petr Yan. And the actual, most technically skilled, best technician when it comes to takedown defense and cage control, Jose Aldo. Admittedly, 2 of these maybe not in the absolute prime of their career, but none of them looked like they were winning. They were winning that fight, and crucially, none of them looked like they had any chance of winning it if it went, Aldo was only 3 rounds, but if it had gone to 5 rounds, he simply would have gotten finished.
You think Aldo would have gotten finished?
Yes.
I don't know. Not much happened in that fight, comparatively.
He was knackered by the end of it.
Yeah.
And Merab was fine. And like he might not have gotten finished, but he would have been like,
yeah,
it would have been an ugly battle for survival if it had gone.
It does seem certain that the longer a fight with Merab goes, the more he is going to settle into the kind of all-out, all-terrain pace that really, really breaks people. I do want to talk about that Aldo fight, though, and it's not the only one, where there are a couple times, it's actually like a pattern in Merab's career, actually including the Cejudo fight, where he starts off sort of capital T technically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
We know the pace is what wins Merab's fights.
The Dodson fight is a big example.
That's a great one too. Yeah. The Aldo fight, the Dodson fight, and very much the Cejudo fight, where I think there might be one other mixed in there too that's escaping my mind right now. Maybe the beginning of the Moraes fight when he gets clobbered. I can't recall. Mm-hmm. Surely Merab and his team must know what's winning his fights. And it's the pressure and the pace. It's the output of every kind of threat imaginable. But it is a really consistent thing where, I don't know, he gets into a fight where maybe he feels he needs to pace himself, or maybe the opponent is just too, like, annoying to get to at first, or whatever. And he, like, thinks he's gonna be a kickboxer.
I mean, these are also all very potent, powerful opponents that he probably doesn't want to rush at face first.
Yeah. And that is certainly something that Sean O'Malley shares with them. Sean O'Malley is also, and I think this could play a big role here, Sean O'Malley is way bigger than all of them.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like, for as long as you're not getting ragdolled, a very, very useful thing to have against a striker who is frankly, like, more hittable than Dricus du Plessis. By a long shot, in fact. Dricus keeps his hands up. Merab is a very hittable striker. He is particularly vulnerable to left hooks. We have seen that work multiple times. Left hands in general, like southpaw left hands as well. I don't know that we see O'Malley throw a lot of left hooks, but he will switch stance and bomb you with an overhand left from the southpaw position. And it's just really easy to touch Merab. He's just not very good defensively. And yet he often starts fights in this mode where, like, he thinks he approaches it defense first. And he has to be persuaded to actually up the pressure, usually like getting hurt. Or at least beat up a little bit. That's very much what happened in this Cejudo fight, where he went out there thinking he was going to have a kickboxing match with Cejudo, who's, like a decent kickboxer by MMA standards. Fast, dangerous, accurate. And Merab just kind of spent good portions of the first round like dancing around and not taking any initiative whatsoever. So that could be a very, very dangerous phase of the fight for him. But I don't know. I just don't know with this fight.
Yeah, I mean that's basically what you have to, to me at least what it comes down to is that, like, it's that early, as I said, like the first 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Is O'Malley going to sleep him or hurt him super badly in the first 8 minutes? I mean, but even if in the case that he hurts him really badly, that's what Moraes did. And Moraes came, achingly close to finishing him.
Oh yeah.
And that meant that Merab went absolutely berserk afterwards.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, to me, it just seems that, like, O'Malley has to knock him out, and if he knocks him out, it's gonna look like Dvalishvili never had a chance. He's going to be stranded on the outside. He's going to be getting pieced up by shots, and then he's going to shoot, and he's going to shoot into a knee, or as you said, he's going to get hit by like some kind of shifting cross, and it'll just knock him out, and it will look like a super one-sided fight.
Yeah.
But for me, if that doesn't happen, because you said that no one has ever fought Dvalishvili like... no one has... O'Malley's never fought anyone like Dvalishvili.
Yeah.
I think the closest person that he's fought is the iteration of Petr Yan that he went up against.
Yeah, just in terms of the torrid pace of the fight, I suppose, yeah. And he did...
Not just the pace, but also, like, how Yan ended up, like, trying to win that fight, right?
Right.
Remember how mad all the Yan stands were afterwards? Why were they mad? Because they were like, look at how much control Piotr had.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't because he was, doing Yan things and because he'd just been pieced up early and then he'd got it in his reads and he downloaded him and he destroyed him in the third or whatever. It was that he was taking him, is that they had a sort of, not hyper fast paced round one, where Yan sort of stayed on the, they sort of contested it largely at mid-range. And then they both sort of went for it in round two, and then Yan just started going for takedowns in round three, which sort of worked, but he also ended up getting, like, less... He ended up doing less damage. And just in general, like, the shape of the pace of that fight, unlike... I've been one of the people who said I think that's a very strong case that O'Malley does win that fight. I think that Jan's case for winning it is based on control, and I think O'Malley does outdamage him. But the general shape of that fight is one which shows that he really doesn't have bulletproof takedown defense over multiple exchanges. And it also shows that, and it's also a fight where if that fight had ended, if that fight had continued from where it had, and it was Merab instead of Yan, and he'd just been steadily starting to pick up more takedowns as the fight went on, I would 100% pick Merab to continue winning that fight. Yeah. Obviously, the differences are that, Yan can actually defend shots. He could work his way into the fight without getting smoked in a way that Merab might struggle with. But it's someone coming very, very close to successfully executing an aggressive pace-based wrestling game plan on Sean O'Malley.
Yeah. Yeah, and what would just, as you say, just the beginning stages of what would be the Merab version of that fight.
Yeah, because it's rounds 4 and 5 are the ones where people obviously would just... is the ones where people just cannot keep up with him because it's just physically impossible.
Yeah, where every opponent Merab fights, it goes that far. It's like they just hate their fucking life.
I mean, the Cejudo fight was 3 rounds.
Yeah.
And Cejudo was knackered.
Yeah, often by the third round in a 3-round fight.
Yeah. Again, like Aldo, like I said, he was looking exhausted. And that was, again, as we've said, one of the lowest paced Merab fights ever.
For sure. Yeah. I do want to talk a little bit about one of the things that I have enjoyed the most about Sean O'Malley's rise, which could also make a difference in the early going. I mean, I fully agree, and I think I may just end up picking Merab on the idea that, like, it's hard to pick anybody when it seems like they have to knock the opponent out.
Mm-hmm.
That's obviously a great way to win. Definitely could happen. Definitely. Like, it's not even unlikely that it happens with the way these two guys combine. But it's always hard for me to make that kind of pick. But one thing I want to talk about with Sean O'Malley, and this relates to a little debate that's been burning away on the old Twitter for the last few weeks. It keeps being instigated by former friend of the show, Miguel Class.
That monster.
Yeah. Who, by the way, I need to get in touch with him. We should have a sumo tournament coming up this month. We're going to have another series of Heavy Henka where I will apologize to him for these remarks. But it's about, do pivots work in MMA? And
No.
this is a question which makes me feel like a fucking insane person. Because you as a Heavy Hands listener might be surprised to know that there are in fact many people out there who staunchly believe that pivoting either does not work in MMA or might work sometimes but will get you in trouble. As if pivoting is a fucking trick shot, like a wheel kick or something. It's a basic tenet of footwork. It is like the most important piece of footwork. It holds everything together, the pivot. And Sean O'Malley does it really well. If you want to see somebody who pivots well, and I'm not talking about, I've actually got a little piece about this, which you should be able to read by the time this episode is up, on my Substack. But I think part of this might be that the examples Miguel always posts to be like, look, this is a pivot, this is good. Either MMA fighters should do this, or here's an MMA fighter doing this, obviously it works. And a lot of the examples are what I would call eye-catching pivots. You know? Evasive moves. Somebody swings a big shot, you slip. You know, it's like Jose Aldo's favorite pivot. The one you identify with him is like the outside slip and then the hard pivot and then the counterpunch. Mm-hmm. And those look great. And they definitely work in MMA, obviously. But we're talking about pivots that you do all the time. And that is the staple of Sean O'Malley's game. He can do big, flashy footwork too. But what he's really good at is just turning so that it's hard to get to him. A maintenance pivot. Turning, keeping the jab between you and him. Keeping you at that long range where he is really, really dangerous. And particularly in the phase of the fight when Merab might not really be going for it yet, I think he may have a really hard time, much more so than against any previous opponent, of seeing the shots coming.
Jose.
It was an off night.
Sean O'Malley has better footwork than Jose Aldo.
I don't think he's going to back
Conor
himself.
Rebush, host of Heavy Hands.
I don't think he's going to back himself into the cage as willingly as Jose did in that fight, honestly.
Why not? He does it all the time.
Not just stand there. I think he's going to keep pivoting. It's okay if your back foot is near the fence as long as you're holding a good position. There's a lot of that fight where Jose just lets himself get squared up against the fence. It's not a great fight from Jose, okay? I'll say it.
No, I will say, Jose's cagecraft and awareness of that kind of stuff is, I think I've said before, one of the things about him that has very clearly declined over the years.
Yeah. Sean will fight off the back foot, but it's not that common to see him, run into the corner and get stuck there because he was trying to retreat in a straight line or something. He's just pretty comfortable circling along the fence, and he doesn't go into a square crab walking stance to do it. He actually keeps that barrier of the lead foot. He keeps the structure of the stance intact, which means he keeps the jab on line and all the things that flow off of the jab, both defensively and offensively. He's got good positioning. It's not perfect, but nobody's is. He's got a good understanding of how to keep his opponent both out of range and out of the good angles that they're trying to get. And I think honestly it could be Merab having a much harder time than he has ever before of seeing the shots coming and also getting to his opponent. He has to start going crazy to get to Sean O'Malley, which will of course in some ways worsen the chances of him getting hurt. But I think, so will standing there at range in a more aggregate kind of way.
Yeah.
So I really do think, while I think I'm going to pick Merab here, I think this could be the most dangerous early phase of a fight that Merab has ever had. He's got an opponent with great positioning, massive power, and massive reach, who knows how to leverage all those things. And he is a guy who starts a fight being incredibly hittable, often kind of tentative and indecisive. He needs to catch his rhythm. He needs to catch that flow before he starts dominating. And until then, he's very, very shaky.
Yeah. That is sort of the basis of my pick, is that I have to pick Merab, I think. Because, again, we've seen Jan and Sterling back O'Malley up to the cage and be able to get their hands on him, even though it cost both of them to at least some extent. And in Aljamain's case, he wasn't actually able to get a single completed takedown, I don't think, before he got slept. And it's the fight where, again, if O'Malley wins, it's going to look like him absolutely smoking a midget who has no idea what they're doing.
Yeah, it's going to look like the first round of like Namajunas and Andrade.
Yeah.
But with a KO, where he's just lighting him up at will. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a dynamic that I can't make myself pick.
Yeah.
I can't pick O'Malley to win that fight because it's such a tightrope to walk. Every time Merab gets his hands on O'Malley, O'Malley's chances of winning the fight will simply go down in a way that is not, in a way that isn't true in modern MMA that often.
Right.
It's not a dynamic, it used to be a dynamic that you would see all the time, but, people are very well-rounded now, but that's just the ability for Merab to just steamroll after a certain point is just, from a physical perspective, completely unmatched. I think to win a sort of a three, and again, the O'Malley path to victory is probably the most realistic path to victory of almost anyone in this division. I think the only person who can possibly fight a full MMA game against against Merab and win, maybe Umar Nurmagomedov. I'd be fascinated to see that fight, whatever happens.
Oh yeah.
But the O'Malley one is just that he has to be perfect. He has to be perfect within the first 8 minutes, or he's probably getting just crushed down the stretch.
Yeah.
He has to make it. He's been confident about saying that he's going to make it look easy. He kind of has to make it look easy, in my opinion. But he's got a real chance of making it look easy. I mean, that is the thing. That's why it's such a hard fight to call. But it's a fight that I cannot realistically, I can't not call for Merab.
Yeah.
I have to call it for him.
Why do I agonize over my picks, Phil? It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
I could just pick Sean O'Malley. From
a probabilistic standpoint, if we were a hive mind, one of us probably, and we were just hedging our bets, one of us should probably pick Sean O'Malley.
I'm kind of tempted to, even though I already said I was probably going to pick Merab. It's just because I always pick the guy in Merab's position. When we have a dynamic anything like this, I always pick the long-term wrestler. Because
you can do it against Leon Edwards.
Well,
Bilal Muhammad's a loser. He's not going to win this fight. I hate Bilal Muhammad. I love Leon Edwards. That's what you said.
Yeah. Let's pull that clip. Can we get that clip? Oh, clip not found. That's a strange...
I hate hard-working game planners, said Connor.
One of my most historically ingrained biases. I hate people who overperform athletic disadvantages. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I am tempted to pick Sean O'Malley. He has really, really impressed me. Much as I really hated to admit it at first. I've just kind of come to accept that, Sean O'Malley is in fact a very good MMA striker. Very good.
Yeah.
in just a strong fundamentals kind of way, and just being a guy who is like freakishly accurate with freakishly good timing. Like he just kind of has a savant ability to find things like that. I don't know. Yeah, whatever. I'll pick Sean O'Malley. Just that way one of us can pretend we were super confident and rub the other's nose in it.
You know I will do that.
Yeah. I mean, that
I know you won't, but I will.
I may, at this point. It'll be something for us.
You picked Cheeto over him, and now
it'll be something for us to talk about anyway. But it's a fascinating fight, and I will say this too. If it is, despite it being a real two-true outcome fight where one guy's going to be dominating pretty much the whole time if they win, both of those will probably be great to watch.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like Merab's dominant wins they're mind-boggling. They're not unimpressive or uninteresting. And likewise, when Sean O'Malley wins dominantly, it is highlight reel material. So, should be great. It's an unquestionably great main event. And it is the last fight on this card. So, thank you for listening to the show. We're going to have a segment break for some reason, I guess, instead of just ending. And after this, I suppose we'll talk about something else.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Yeah, we were already talking about the fight. Hello, welcome back to Heavy Hands. And I was just sort of yammering on as I do, and then Phil said, we should probably start recording. Thank God there's an adult in the room. And I'm not talking about you, Simon. I know. Silly Simon.
It's going to be so freaky if he does actually sound like Marge Simpson.
I think he might be British. Could be another one. I'm surrounded because Kyle vouched for him, and that makes me think he must be British. Kyle hates foreigners.
That is true. I guess the redcoats are coming.
Always have been. Okay. Grasso Shevchenko 3. That is the co-main event of this card, which was originally intended to be UFC Noche, and then I thought for a brief minute it was like not UFC Noche, but it's definitely UFC Noche again. They're gonna have a bunch of like Mexican themed video packages like playing all over the walls and shit.
Something like this, yes. Isn't it also part of Riyadh season?
What is Riyadh season?
It's a thing where people in Saudi Arabia gave Dana White a lot of money.
Oh, well, good. At least it went to a person who needed it.
Yeah, and they were like, you do something for us? And he was like, Riyadh season. I think that's it.
That's what he did? He just sort of named it after their capital city?
Yeah.
It's a term I've seen thrown around a lot, and now that you've defined it for me, I'm sure you've done deliberately a bad job, but I'm no closer to knowing what it is. So yes, the event apparently is called, very catchily, UFC 306 Riyadh Season Noche UFC.
Yeah, I mean, but at least it's two areas that, have historically been associated. Mexico and Saudi Arabia.
There's some similarities in cuisine. They use spices.
On that rich heritage of linkages.
What is Noche UFC, by the way, while we're on this subject? I know we were just in the middle of actually talking about the dynamics of the fight, and now we've gotten sidetracked, but why is it...
I fully respect the fact that we're talking about the fight in our break. The actual episode starts and we're instantly sidelined into talking shit about the event.
Why is it called Noche? Doesn't that mean night?
I guess.
Like Buenos noches? Good evening?
Yeah.
Why is it called Evening UFC? It doesn't... They just picked a Spanish word, as far as I can tell. What the, like...
I don't know. Is there any kind of...
Shouldn't it be called, like, Lucha UFC or something?
In Mexican Independence Day?
Maybe. Perhaps. It's possible there's just something I completely don't know. But, like, why wouldn't they call it, like, Lucha UFC or something? That, like, feels fitting. I don't know. Maybe Noche UFC has tremendous meaning regarding Mexican Independence Day.
Yeah.
But as far as I can tell,
I
it's
believe
just...
they were only able to achieve independence with the support of the of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Why? Which is why they have this long-standing relationship and friendship between the two countries.
So anyway, the fact that it is Noche UFC is a crushing blow to Valentina Shevchenko, who, as we all know, definitely would have won the last fight if it hadn't also been Noche UFC. Because the judges, who were all presumably Saudi Arabian, really wanted to give it to a Mexican fighter to honor their historic relationship. So sadly, Shevchenko is cursed once again to... Yeah, I mean, let's talk about it. What's the story of these two fights so far?
I mean, the story is essentially that they're quite... They're shockingly evenly matched fights.
Yeah.
Given the fact that Shevchenko is a genuinely good wrestler and Grasso is really bad at takedown defense.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and then you then sort of ask the question, oh, okay, so is Grasso just kind of like outstriking her like really consistently then? Is that what the difference in these fights is? And you're like, no, that's not really what they're like either. It's just that the exchanges on the feet tend to be very tepid and lukewarm, and it's just that Grasso tends to land with a bit more pop when she does, and that Shevchenko's grappling attempts don't tend to lead to much, and that it ends up getting, in both cases, the dynamic is complicated by the fact that at some point Shevchenko jumps on her back, and in one fight chokes her out, and in the other one just manages to like seal the fifth round.
Yeah, other way around. Grasso jumps on Shevchenko's back. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry, other way around. Yeah.
Yeah, it is very much a series of Grasso getting the big moments. I would say the first fight, she is more consistent. That's a pretty aggressive, high output fight from her. But then, she kind of starts to drift out of it a bit, and then she gets a big moment and wins. The second fight, I don't think Grasso fights well at all.
Oh.
But she gets even more big moments. She doesn't get one that finishes the fight, but she gets, she gets the big back take, and she gets a knockdown. And she even wins some of the protracted ground exchanges from her back just by doing stuff when Shevchenko is just trying to hold her. But in many ways, it's a much more consistent performance from Shevchenko than we've seen in many of her wins.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not enough to actually clearly win.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing, is that, Shevchenko loses a fight in which she is looking surprisingly good, and Shevchenko is looking surprisingly bad. Given the direction in which these two are likely to go, I think it's difficult to avoid making just a pure age pick. Because just probabilistically, one fighter is likely to... one fighter contains the potential to look better and better from fight to fight. Doesn't matter whether we're actually going to see it. It's the possibility that it could happen. Whereas Shevchenko contains at this point, the certainty that she's going to be physically declining. At least physically declining.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've probably seen some signs of that even before the Grasso fights. That she was
for sure.
Slower, a little more vulnerable, whatever.
Yeah, and much of her fighting style simply requires her to be incredibly quick.
Yeah.
Because she's basically controlling a very narrow slice of range and then hitting them whenever they cross into it.
Yeah.
Or jumping back out of it. That's essentially all she does, and then she hits takedowns. And that needs her to be very fast, and it needs her to be like quite potent in order to scare people off.
Yeah.
And I think what we're seeing in these fights is that she's not as fast and she's not as potent.
Yeah. I think also there's an interesting angle to look at this from, where Grasso is she's like a harbinger of the Drikas thing. A paradigm shift kind of opponent, where Shevchenko was for a very long time, like a specter hanging over the division, like a lot of great champions are. You get in there with them, and you're the fifth person to challenge them, and nobody's even come close. And you work up your confidence, and you've got this great game plan, and you've had the best training camp of your life. You're more motivated than ever. And then you get in the cage and stare across at them, and you shit your pants. You're like, oh God, it's happening. It's real. The thing I've been just sort of imagining as like this distant threat is real. And I'm going to be embarrassed like all those other women were. And this happened, for Shevchenko, as it happened for Izzy. And what we saw, with the Drikas fight and Izzy, and even the Sean Strickland fight, is that a lot of that's fake. And probably to an extent always was. That you get to see the huge extent to which psychology influences your ability to beat somebody.
Or, for example, Chael Sonnen against Anderson Silva is one of
another great one, yes.
The absolute classic examples is that Chael Sonnen just charges Anderson and just knocks him down.
Yeah. It's all a facade, It's not like there's nothing to back it up, but you can just go out there and do the stuff you do that wins your other fights, and you're going to have a pretty good chance of winning this one. There's more parity between you and the champion than you believe. And I think this has very much been sort of revealed in the Grasso fights with Shevchenko as well. Because there's a lot of business that really great strikers are supposed to be doing that Shevchenko doesn't do. That Israel Adesanya didn't really do. And in his case, it was like getting away with shit footwork. Getting away with sort of getting tired and trying to conceal that with a sort of veneer of confident passivity. The opponent's like, well, I can't go after him. What if he does the thing he doesn't want to do? Because he's tired.
Mm-hmm.
For Shevchenko, she spends a lot of time in every fight doing literally nothing. And there's like a thing where fans will watch like a slow-paced boxing match and be like, they're not doing anything. Hit him! But they are usually doing something. They're trying to outposition each other. They're trying to they're actively creating threats and trying to defend against them. Even without the punches actually being thrown, things are being put out there and responded to. And Valentina Shevchenko, as you said, she tries to protect a narrow slice of range. That really is her conception of counterpunching. and her conception of range fighting. But as far as improving her position actively throughout the fight goes, she just kind of doesn't do it. Even when she managed to step in and land a crisp jab, a strike which, by the way, was very effective for her in that second fight with Grasso, she then just steps right back to the exact same spot she started from. Over and over and over she does this. And I think you can look at what happens in the fight with Grasso is like, what if somebody just like steps in and hits you when you do that? You pop a shot, and what if they just like, oh, you're not moving, you're like standing square? Okay, you're going to rely purely on your reaction time, and you're 36 years old, so that reaction time probably isn't as good as it used to be. And then they just like nail you. Because you're not doing anything. So I think it's, age is definitely part of it, but I also think it's that like Grasso doesn't respect Shevchenko.
Yep.
And we saw this in two different modes. The first fight, she went out there and confidently disrespected her. Like, she put pressure on her. She threw a lot of volume. And in the second fight, she just like totally disregarded her. She was like just kind of doing stuff out there or not doing stuff for long stretches of the fight. And Shevchenko's working really hard and putting together like actual combinations and countering and using her jab so much more than she usually does. All these things I asked for her to do. And like Grasso just decides it doesn't matter. And in a way that kind of just makes it so.
Yep.
So I don't know. That's an interesting wrinkle to consider to this fight, is the degree to which fighters like Shevchenko always have been protected by the facade of invincibility. And I just think it's kind of funny that like I think Grasso looked kind of like shit in their last fight, and she still didn't lose.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the other thing, is that like in the first fight she was like, well, Valentina isn't invincible, let me just go after her, and then just started dinging her up with combinations. In the second fight, she took what she took away from the first was that she was like, I'm a better technical fighter than Valentina Shevchenko. I can just fight her from range. And that's not actually particularly true.
No.
It just made for a sort of awful nip-tuck experience. As you said, like very much this is championship mentality. So she kind of went out the other side of the optimal approach. Of being, as being so spooked that you don't throw anything because you're terrified you're going to die. Then there's just pressuring them and beating them up. And then on the other side of it, it's like, well, I'm so good I don't need to do anything again. She's kind of gone through fear and out the other side into possible overconfidence. I'm really tempted to pick Shevchenko in this one.
Just in sheer probability, right?
Yeah, I mean, she's got to win. You look at how these fights have gone, and you're like, she's got to win one at some point. Like, Grasso was extremely fortunate to win both those fights.
Well, she didn't win the last one.
On the other hand, it's the trending thing. Anytime a young fighter beats an older one, like,
of course,
one who's, visibly on the downslope, you are taking your like bet or whatever it is in your hands anytime you're like, well, I'm sure they're gonna, the old one's gonna look good next time out. The young one isn't just gonna thrash them, and it can happen very, very suddenly.
Yeah.
It can, in some ways it can be like Leon versus Usman, where it was like, oh, it's going badly in the first fight, and then it's going much, much better in the second, and you're like, oh, Usman's really kind of missing something now. Or it can be like Figueiredo Joe B, where you're just like, oh, or Weili Zhang against Joanna Jędrzejczyk.
Yep.
Where suddenly the older person who's been showing, elements of cracking all this time they're suddenly just gone.
Yep.
Like they were never there. And in this kind of situation, you should always pick that. You should pretty much always just say, like, I think. You should just You should just be like, I think the older fighter is going to look worse, because they often can, and when they do look worse, it can be catastrophic.
Yeah. Let me put it this way. I think Shevchenko did the best she could possibly do in their last fight. Better than she should be able to do given her age. But there's a long amount of experience there, and there was a lot of resentment. Like, she was motivated, and I think it was one of her best performances in the UFC. And it netted her a draw. One of her best performances also features a sequence where, like, she gets put into a front headlock and she forgets what the rules are. So she tries to put a hand to the ground and Grasso just starts kneeing her in the face. And instead of adjusting, she's just like stubbornly insists on this isn't allowed and just keeps that position while Grasso just knees her in the face 8 more times. This is somebody who's not prepared for somebody to just like not play by the sort of rules they've constructed in their head of how their fights are supposed to go. And this is why Grasso just shocked her so many times, despite, just like doing even more nothing than Valentina for long stretches of the fight.
Yeah. I'm still really tempted to pick Shevchenko, you know.
You know what would be really funny is for Grasso to win in a genuine robbery.
Yeah.
That would be a good result. It's like she clearly lost and the judges just give it to her. I would like to hear Valentina's post-fight comments then.
I think in many ways, like Val, we've kind of talked about this before, but I think Val would be happy if she got like a genuine robbery. Or happier, like it would give her something to sink her teeth into.
Sure, yeah.
Like we said, but I think we said before it wasn't on the podcast, but it was like, imagine if they did do a card in Peru or Kyrgyzstan or whatever, and Alexa Grasso won a close decision.
Yeah, it would destroy her. She would have nothing to rail against.
Yeah.
She wouldn't like that.
Still so tempted to pick her, but I think you're right. I think that's about the best performance she can come up with at this point, and it was still, she might have won it, but it was still just achingly close. And just based on physical trends, I'll pick her to do it again.
Yeah. I mean, she didn't get hurt in the first fight either. Got hurt in the second one. Hurt and shook. Yep. Yeah, I think I'll take Grasso as well. Just what a bizarre series of fights, really. It's a strange way for a division to change hands. I suppose it's on par with like Silva getting KO'd and then having his leg snap in half against Chris Weidman. That was a strange series of events for a long reigning champion to finally crumble.
Yeah, I feel like it's close to the Adesanya kind of situation, because it's like it's an incredibly dominant long-running champion, and you're just looking at the challenger and the new champion and just being like, I'm not even that good, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, should be fun. I hope there's some fuckery, because I really do I want the spite. That's been the most savory part of this matchup to me so far, so we'll see. But both of us picking Grasso, mostly on youth. All right, let's take one more break. When we come back, we're going to clean up the scraps that call themselves the rest of this undercard after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
All right. Welcome back to Heavy Hands. We have, of course, one big fight left, relatively speaking, on this otherwise kind of scattershot UFC 306 lineup. And this is, of course, one that Phil and I have talked about many times already. I feel like we've talked about it in depth once and possibly in brief another time. So it'll be really good to get Simon's perspective on this. Simon, what do you think of Lopes Ortega?
I would say Lopes Ortega, yeah.
Who the fuck is that?
Whoa, who's this guy?
Phil, is that you? You sound more cultured.
No, it's not Phil, man. It's not Phil.
You sound more cultured.
He's not here.
Than I'm used to. You sound like you can appreciate the taste of coffee.
Yeah, I love coffee now.
Wow. All right. So Simon, with 100 YouTube comments of at least listening to two jagoffs talk about MMA under your belt, what do you think of Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopes?
All right. So anything I get wrong in here is going to be directly contributed to Phil and Connor.
Yeah.
You know, both of them. That's where I learned everything I've ever learned about MMA. It's from those two. So, anything I get wrong, it's back on them.
You said you also were a Jack Slack fan, so if things are wrong, we'll just go ahead and we'll blame him.
All right, Jack Slack. It's all your fault, man.
Yep.
No, yeah. So I'm going to start my whole thing by saying I'm going to pick Ortega in this because I do not think Lopes, I do not think he's top 10 material. I really don't.
All right. You are, already, based on what we talked about before we started here, you are clearly a Heavy Hands listener.
Yeah.
Because you are setting yourself up to be brutally disappointed by assuming that the sport makes sense, that there's like some importance to things like process and technique. Because, as I mentioned to you, first of all, I agree. I think I picked Ortega last time, and that should scare you because this is the age of the not particularly good fighter achieving greatness.
Yeah, it is. And, I don't know. I mean, Ortega has a jab, but he doesn't have abs, and that's kind of the main thing at featherweight, it seems like.
Not cut enough to be a real contender. Yeah, that's a great
What
point.
are you doing, Ortega? Why don't you do some crunches, man?
Yeah, Diego Lopes, I mean, why do you think he's not top 10 material? What stands out to you or doesn't stand out to you about him?
So, in a good division, I would say he's not top 10 material, but I don't know at this point that featherweight is still a good division.
Mm-hmm.
He's very athletic, like he's a very finish-oriented fighter. Like great submissions. Like he finished Gavin Tucker, who's like another fighter on paper who like should totally win that matchup. You know what I mean? Like there's no process to Diego Lopes, and that's sort of like my main issue with him. And I think the Ige fight, I think he's very lucky that was short notice. Not that Ige is like a super processed fighter himself, but I do think he probably would win that with a camp or anything like that, just because Lopes, even at his best, does not have like a great process in any of his fights.
No, he is. I would call him a almost. This doesn't necessarily make sense because he's not always going apeshit. Like in the Ige fight, he was pretty conservative, but
yeah,
in terms of what his plan is, he strikes me as a pure brawler in like every respect. He just wants to attack things. That's my
right.
take.
I think.
Yeah.
So like Ortega has sort of learned to like consolidate that, he's like, they're both very opportunistic. I'd say like submission wise. I'm not like a huge grappling guy, but I'd say they're both like extremely opportunistic.
You really are a heavy hands
submission
fan.
wise. And I think
not a huge grappling
Ortega
guy. Be still my heart.
What was that? Sorry.
Not a huge grappling guy. You're a man after my own heart. I don't know shit about grappling. Go on.
Grappling is gay.
That's right.
No, yeah, I think Ortega has learned to sort of consolidate that. you know, and maybe like conceal his like his bloodlust for like the opportunistic submission, whereas Lopes just wants to absolutely, you know, he wants to create that from the very jump. I think Ortega has built a game where he can sort of funnel that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like he can win a ranged fight, like he can win a striking match with like Korean Zombie, right? But I mean, once you get to a certain level, that doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like Volkanovski, of course, is going to just like own him on the feet.
Sure.
But I think with someone like Lopes, he's going to just, I honestly think he's just going to outbox him.
Yeah, I mean, we are, of course, having to assume that Brian Ortega is healthy.
Right.
At least healthy enough that he can save the fight-altering injury until the moments before the fight begins, as he did last time out.
Yeah.
But I mean, I tend to agree. I actually found Lopez's fight with Ige pretty instructive because, again, it's Ige on super short notice. He looked in shape, but he did not look like he'd had a lot of sparring, if you know what I mean.
What do you mean exactly?
Well, because, you know, he didn't get tired. In fact, he outlasted Lopes. Lopes is the one, despite it being a fairly tepid fight, who is like flagging and getting cornered and beaten up at the end. It's just that Ige looked the way I would look in sparring, especially if I hadn't done it in a while, with somebody who's way taller than me, which is nervous.
Right, yeah.
Nervous. He looked anxious just about the reach. He was getting backed up.
Yeah.
It's not like he was getting hit all over the place, but he looked like he was uncomfortable just with Lopez's size. That was kind of my base read on that fight. And then by the time Ige realized he was going to lose and decided, you know, fuck it, I'm just going to pressure, Lopes was unable to stop him. He got tired late in the fight, which I got to assume is going to be a problem for him in any prolonged fight. I mean, how many times has this guy even gone to a decision?
Very few. I mean, he went to a decision with Movsar. I reckon that was I mean, he totally. That's the thing with the Movsar fight. It's like as one of our have mutual friends here. I mean, not really, but Zane Simon. Never overrate a fighter in a loss. He always says this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people have kind of done that. You know what I mean with him.
I mean, he's kind of backed it up now. If you've overrated him in a loss, then he goes on to win 4 fights. But it's
coming, man. Hey, it's coming.
This is the trouble with these fighters, man. You're like, how are they doing this? This is bullshit. They're not that good. And then they just keep winning.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, here's the difference, like when he gets okay. Sorry, I'm saying like a lot. You can edit this out, yeah?
That's all right. You're young, I assume.
All righty. In like Ortega against Yair, because I think Yair and Diego Lopes are pretty comparable actually in terms of like how they approach a fight. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're both just very athletic guys who are extremely finish oriented, and they don't have much of a process, but they're going to do everything, and they're going to do it really hard. They're going to kick, they're going to punch, they're going to go for any kind of submission they can get their hands on.
Yeah.
And I think Ortega went into that Yair fight with like the exact, like the second one at least. I mean, maybe the first one too, but you know, his shit fell off, his arm fell off, so
right.
It didn't really matter. But I think he went into that second one with like a great game plan. You know, he pressured, he understood, like he understands where he's at physically. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He can tank about everything. He can get in there, like he can clinch, he can make it messy, and he'll get him down eventually, and that's okay. Like whatever he tanks in the meantime is all right, because he knows that once it gets down, like it's not really a competition.
Right. It's part of the process.
Righty.
Yeah, I mean, you were saying to me before that you made the point that featherweight is a weirdly finish-oriented top 10.
It is.
Or historically has been, which... Yeah, you've got guys like, and what you mean is like, it's not necessarily, a division full of like round winners with like really clean processes or like really consistent ways of picking up rounds. Guys like Yair Rodriguez, Brian Ortega historically, I would say maybe less so now, has become a much better round winner.
He has, yeah.
But yeah, Josh Emmett's still hanging around there. Calvin Cater goes to plenty of decisions, but is a big puncher who's in crazy brawls.
Yeah.
And of course, Max Holloway was the champion for a long time and was a top 10 for a long time. And that dude, finished nearly everybody he fought given enough time.
Right.
Now, since you raised that point, I will make the case that Diego Lopes does sort of fit the bill, right?
A finish-oriented fighter.
He's a super finish-oriented fighter. I mean, in that respect alone, he seems like he fits in with the sort of ethos of the top 10 at featherweight. Brian Ortega
He does seem like that.
Used to be a lot more like Diego Lopes. Found out. The thing is, it's not like it didn't work at the top level. It just didn't work against the champions.
Right.
That was the level he ran into twice that I think made him a considerably more well-rounded, patient, thoughtful fighter.
Right.
But now he's kind of straddling that line. Diego Lopes, to me, while I agree, I don't think he's very good. He might be like right on the money for what featherweight contenders tend to look like. Violent guys who go for the kill at all times. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think anymore, Simon. I mean, Dricus du Plessis is a champion.
You're right.
I don't know. I can't make sense of this.
So, I mean, it's weird to say like featherweight's a very finish-oriented division because you have like so many great round winners that have been long, like
long-time champions.
Jose Aldo, all-time great, probably the goat.
Right.
But a great round winner, Volkanovski, obviously not. But that's the thing, against other guys and not like Max Holloway, who's like the hardest guy to finish maybe ever. I mean, up there, like seriously.
Yeah.
He was like a round winning guy, like Jose Aldo, round winner. Ilia Topuria, I guess he's a pretty finish oriented guy. But like all of these guys have like a technical base. Even Max Holloway, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And I feel like Ortega ran up against that wall and he kind of learned the lesson then. Like, I need to in that fight with Korean Zombie, he sort of showed another level of depth to his striking that he hadn't had before. Like,
yeah,
even in the fight with Max, like he landed some shots. He had like a great round 3. He always has a great round 3, but
yeah,
I don't know. He showed another level of depth.
Yeah, certainly. And in that fight with Yair, I mean, it is a finish, but it's a much more patient, deliberate version of Brian Ortega, who like actually has a plan. That's where I totally agree with you. Like Diego Lopes is not just a not very good technician. He's like a sort of an anti-strategic fighter.
Yeah.
I don't think he would have won that Dan Ige fight if Dan Ige had started pressuring him one round earlier.
Right.
And so I think, and he didn't finish Dan Ige, and that's part of probably why he looked so unremarkable, because when he's not hurting somebody or not scaring them and wrapping them up in a submission, there's a lot of empty space. So, you kind of have to set these considerations aside when you're trying to predict a fight, but unless Brian Ortega gets injured, or leads to a submission,
right,
or he can't take a shot anymore, which we haven't seen any evidence of yet, then it is kind of difficult to see how Diego Lopes actually beats him.
Right. And is this 3 rounds or 5? Do you know?
I think it's 3. That's a good question, though. I don't think they do 5-round fights that aren't co-mains.
Oh, wait, what's? Oh, yeah, no, because this one's Grasso and
Grasso,
Shevchenko, yeah.
Shevchenko 3. That's right.
Oh, I'm so looking for. Hey, you want to discuss that one after this?
we already talked about it. You can't tell me what you think the funniest result would be. I'm sure you have a thought on that. But yeah, we'll do that to close out. But I think it's a 3-rounder, as far as I can tell.
All right, cool. I would say that's probably better for Lopes, but I still think I would absolutely still pick Ortega in this just because once you said, once Dan Ige started pressuring Lopes, he had very few answers. Like when the deeper Lopes gets into an exchange, he tends to just fall into the clinch.
Yeah.
And Ortega is actually really good in the clinch. Like, as far as featherweights go, he might be the best in the top 5 in the clinch. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he's strong there for sure.
Right. I mean, he has like the front headlock series, like everything from there.
Well,
he's got a great guillotine.
And also, I think it's just possible Lopes gets stranded at range because, unlike Dan Ige, Brian Ortega is as big as him and has a long striking game. At the very least, he has a jab.
Yeah. I mean, even in the Volkanovski fight, Ortega didn't do, given it's Volkanovski, he actually didn't do that bad in the first, 2 rounds, at range with Volk. I mean, he did not do that bad, given, circumstance.
Yeah. No, I'm going to stick with I believe the pick I made before and side with you. I'll take Brian Ortega too.
Yep, me too. And I think he's going to pressure, and I think maybe he might even finish Lopes. Probably, if the Ige fight is anything to go off, maybe he finishes him in round 3 or 2 or 3, something like that.
Could be. All right, well, since I got you here, give me your quick thoughts. Couple sentences each on the main and co-main. The main thing I want to know for the co-main is what's the funniest way it could end? What's the funniest
All right,
result?
so this is Grasso Shevchenko, the funniest way?
Sure, yeah.
All right, I think Valentina guillotine probably the funniest way that will end.
Grasso goes for a takedown, gets submitted.
Right. Yeah. Something horrible.
I said to Phil, Grasso wins in a genuine robbery.
Oh no.
Like she's clearly lost and the judges give her the decision. I think that would be pretty funny.
That would be the best.
Valentina's life would be ruined. But
it would be over.
O'Malley Dvalishvili. That's the tough one for this card. The best one for this card.
Oh no.
What do you think? Any vague thoughts?
O'Malley's gonna own him, man.
You think so?
Absolutely.
I picked Sean O'Malley myself, but I picked him on the basis that he's gonna have to get a quick knockout. Yeah.
A quick knockout? I don't think he even needs that.
Really?
No, I don't think so. I think even if it goes long, I think O'Malley probably still just beats him. I like Merab. I think he has a great game. I think he totally understands what he needs to do in every matchup, especially Petr Yan. He did so well in that. But I don't think against a huge, O'Malley is so fucking huge. I don't think that's going to work against someone like O'Malley. I mean, the low kicks is a huge thing that I've been worrying about, at least for O'Malley. Mm-hmm. Not that I'm a huge O'Malley guy, but I'm a Cheeto guy myself. I don't know if you know.
Ooh, good thing Phil's not here.
Yeah, it's kind of
good thing Phil's not here.
Phil's not here. I'm about to get into it with Phil, man.
Well,
no,
hey,
yeah, I think O'Malley will own him.
All right. Well, if you're right, not just that he wins, but that he goes into round 3, round 4, he's fighting off takedowns, he's dealing with the pressure and still just fighting a damn near perfect fight, then having already promised you could come on the show after 100 consecutive YouTube comments, I will now promise that you can replace Phil.
Oh my God.
No, that's not going to happen. that's not going to happen.
No, I don't want to replace Phil. Then I can't listen.
Yeah. Don't, everyone says do what you love for a living. Don't make it a job. Bad idea. No.
Yes, sir.
Leave work at work. That's my lesson to you, young man, who's probably the same age as me.
Oh no. How old are you?
34.
I'm 21.
You're 21?
I'm 21.
Oh my God. This should be illegal for me to have you on my podcast. This feels like it's like on a police sting. All right. Well, young man, take that lesson from me, your wizened elder. Don't do what you love for money. And,
wow. Okay.
And I think that'll wrap us up. Do you have anything to plug?
All right.
Simon?
Hold on. Connor.
Yes.
Can I have some plugs real quick? I got a couple plugs here.
That's what I want to hear. Give me some plugs. What do you got?
All right. It's my moment. It's my 15 minutes of fame coming to an end. All right. I'd like to give a special thanks to my every single person in the YouTube comments who ever supported me on this journey. 100 comments. It wasn't easy. I had to tune in every single Wednesday with my subscriber bell on, typing all my comments and everything. But, special thanks to Nico on Twitter. Nico?
I believe I know Nico, yeah.
He's the man. Special thanks to Maddie on Twitter. You know Maddie?
I definitely know Maddie.
Oh, yeah, Maddie. We got Himbo. You know Himbo?
Definitely,
All of those guys. So those three guys are the best. Tennessee Will, he's got an MMA fight coming up. Man, he's the best.
All right.
I don't have ats for all of them. I don't know all their ats, but, those are the guys.
You got the handles. Those are the screen names. You should be able to find them.
Right, they'll find them.
I do have a couple ats for our audience, though, at Evil Greg Jackson and at Boxing Bush. The first one is Phil.
Oh, right.
And the second one is me. And I want to say thanks to Simon for your loyal support. I assume you're going to stop listening to the show now, right? You've made it.
I'm done. Now I'm out of here.
All right. So that means the call is open for some other intrepid listener to try to set a new bar. Next time, 1,000 consecutive comments, and then you're on the show.
Oh.
So get cracking, kids.
Oh. Are you still going to be alive at that point?
Phil may not be. He's even older than me.
Oh, no.
Yeah. He and Zane are both older than me, actually. I'm the baby. That's why I assumed you were my age.
No, I'm younger, man.
Oh, shit. Anyway, thanks for coming on the show. Thank you to all of you for listening. Also, check out my Substack, facepunching.substack.com. I got a new piece up about how, yes, pivoting actually does work in MMA, and I'll definitely have something up about O'Malley Dvalishvili next week, depending on whatever interesting thing happens in that fight. Check out
Connor, are you sure pivoting works in MMA?
I am one. Do not even get me started on this, Simon. All right.
What about head kicks? What about low kicks, man? You can't pivot. What are you talking about?
Also, check out the Patreon. Phil and I talked about Sean Brady and Gilbert Burns and basically everything else from that main card in a bonus episode. So check that out, patreon.com/heavyhands. And that'll do it. Till next week. Do you want to say the catchphrase, Simon?
What's the catchphrase?
Oh my God. You don't listen to the end of the episode. If you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place.
Yeah. Let me do that again. You can edit that out.
Okay.
If you came here for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. Is that it?
This has been Heavy Hands. Jesus Christ.
This has been Heavy Hands.
Some fan you are.
I'm a fucking fan, dude. I don't listen to the very end because I'm clicking the next episode.